Thursday afternoon, I'm standing in a fuel system parts aisle, and a guy next to me is staring at two fuel pumps for a 2013 Ford F-150. One's $190. The other's the OEM unit, $420. He doesn't know which one he needs. What he doesn't know yet is that he's about to buy the wrong thing entirely, because the pump isn't what failed. His habits at the gas station killed it. And he's gonna do the exact same thing to the new one. I spent 14 years wrenching in an independent shop in Ohio, then a stretch as a technical inspector for an insurance outfit, which is a polite way of saying I got paid to figure out why engines died and whether somebody was lying about it. You see patterns after a while, the same failures, over and over, on cars that should have gone 300,000 miles. And almost none of them came from how people drive. They came from 90 seconds at the pump, 2 or 3 times a week, repeated for years. There are 9 of these. 9 things you probably do at the gas station, half of them without thinking, that quietly chew through parts the average driver never even knows exist. Most cost you nothing to stop. A couple will save you a 4-figure repair bill the dealer would have been thrilled to write up. I'm gonna count them down, worst for last, because the one at number 1 is the single most expensive habit on this whole list. And right now, statistically, more than half of you are doing it every time you drive. I'll get to it. There's also one at number 4 that I see flooded an entire emission system on a 2-year-old car, and the owner had no idea he caused it. Hold on to that. We'll get there. Here's what nobody tells you about a gas station. That pump, that nozzle, that underground tank you can't see, the fuel sitting in it, the temperature of the air, the little click when the tank's full, every one of those is a variable, and your engine is downstream of all of them. You're not just buying gas. You're letting whatever's in that tank, in whatever condition it's in, get pumped straight into a fuel system that was engineered with some very specific assumptions about how you'd treat it. Break those assumptions, and stuff fails early, quietly, with no warning light until it's too late to be cheap. Let's start with number 9. This one's the smallest, and I'm putting it first because it's the one I'm guiltiest of myself. You pull in, you leave the engine running, and you fuel up while it idles. Maybe it's cold, and you want the heat. Maybe you just don't think about it. On a modern car, here's what's happening under the hood while that engine idles and you fill the tank. Your evaporative emissions system, I'll be saying that a lot today, so let's just call it EVAP, has a purge valve that opens and closes to pull fuel vapor out of a storage canister and burn it in the engine. When the engine's running, that valve cycles. You're dumping liquid fuel in one end of the system while the computer is trying to manage vapor at the other end. And on certain designs, that's enough to confuse a vapor pressure sensor and set a code. Not always. But I've seen it throw a check engine light on Chrysler products, in particular, the 3.6 Pentastar minivans, where the EVAP system is touchy to begin with. Now here's the part that actually matters more than the emission stuff. Heat. You drive 40 minutes on the highway, you pull in, the tank and the lines, and the pump are all heat-soaked. Filling a hot tank means more of what you're pumping flashes to vapor and gets pushed back out through the recovery system instead of staying in your tank as liquid. You paid for it. You didn't keep it. Shut the engine off. Let it sit 30 seconds. Small thing. But the step almost nobody takes. Fill in the morning when the ground and the fuel are cooler. Not at 4 p.m. in July when the underground tank's been baking all day. You'll get measurably more fuel per dollar, and the temperature swing is hardest on the EVAP charcoal. Number 9's the gentle one. They get worse. Number 8. You're guessing at octane. And you're guessing wrong in one of 2 directions. Direction 1. Your car calls for 87 regular and you've been buying 91 or 93 premium because somebody told you it's better for the engine or it cleans things out. It doesn't. Octane is not a quality rating. It's a resistance to detonation rating, how hard the fuel is to set off before the spark plug wants it to. A higher number means the fuel is harder to ignite under pressure. Think of it like the flash point on a match. A car engineered around 87 octane gains nothing from 91, except the $4 extra you left at the counter. The engine can't use the resistance it doesn't need. Direction 2 is the one that does damage. Your car's a turbocharged 4. A lot of them now. The Honda 1.5 turbo in the Civic and CR-V, the Hyundai and Kia 1.6 turbos, Ford's EcoBoost line, and the door jamb or the fuel door says premium required or premium recommended, and you've been feeding it 87 to save money. Here's the mechanics of what that does. Under boost, cylinder pressure spikes. Cheap low-octane fuel under that pressure wants to detonate early, before the spark. That's knock. Your knock sensor hears it. The computer pulls timing to protect the engine, and now you're down on power and down on fuel economy, which means you're buying more of the cheap gas to go the same distance. Do the math on that. The savings evaporate. And over years, the carbon and the heat from running on the edge of detonation cook deposits onto your valves and pistons. The cross comparison that matters. Toyota and Mazda still build most of their lineup around 87 octane on purpose, naturally aspirated, lower compression, designed so you never have to think about it. The German brands and the modern turbo crowd assume you'll feed them premium. Same fuel door, two completely different contracts with the engine. The step nobody takes. Read the actual sticker on your own car, not the internet's opinion about your car. Required means required. Recommended means it'll run on regular but it'll pull timing to do it. There's a real difference and the manual buries it. Number 7. The gas cap. You twist it till it stops, or you think you do, and you drive off. And maybe one click short, or cross-threaded just slightly, or the rubber seal's gone hard and cracked, and you never noticed. Here's what nobody tells you about that cap. It's not just a lid. On any car built in the last 25 years, that cap is a sealed part of the EVAP system, and the system is designed to hold a specific pressure or vacuum so the computer can test itself for leaks. A loose cap, a bad seal, a cap that clicks but doesn't seat. The computer runs its leak test, fails it, and throws a check engine light. P045 is the big leak code. P0457 is literally the loose fuel cap code. Some cars will straight up tell you on the dash. I watched people pay shops $120 for a diagnostic and a smoke test, when the entire fault was a $2 cap or, on a lot of newer cars, a capeless filler neck with a little flapper seal that got a crumb stuck in it. This is where it gets weird though. A persistent EVAP leak doesn't just light the dash. On some engines it lets unmetered air sneak into the system and skews the fuel trims, and over a long enough time a car that's constantly running its mixture a hair off because it can't pass an EVAP self-test will foul plugs and load up the catalytic converter sooner than it should. The cap costs $10. The catalytic converter on a 2016 Subaru Outback costs north of $1,500 installed, and they get stolen for the metal inside them, which tells you what they're worth. The step the average person skips: if you've got a capeless filler, look up inside it once a year for cracks in the seal, and if you've got a screw cap, replace it the second the click feels mushy instead of crisp. Nobody replaces a gas cap on purpose. Almost everybody should have, at some point, and didn't. Now we slow down for a second, because the next 3 are the ones I actually built this whole thing around, and number 7 we just covered was the warm-up. Number 6. There's a tanker truck at the station, the big rig with the hoses running down into the ground, refilling the underground tanks, and you pull right up and fill your car. Stop doing that. Turn around and come back in an hour. Let me explain what's physically happening below the concrete you're standing on. That underground tank has been sitting, and anything that sits, settles. Water that condensed out of the air over weeks, fine rust particles off the inside of an old steel tank, dirt, sediment, all of it sinks to the bottom and stays there, below the level where the station's own pump draws fuel from. The system's designed around that settled layer staying put. Then a tanker shows up and dumps 3,000 or 4,000 gallons in, fast, and it churns that whole tank like a blender. The crud that was politely sitting on the bottom is now suspended through the entire tank, and for the next 20-30 minutes, the fuel coming up the hose into your car is carrying it. Where does it go? Straight to your fuel filter, if your car still has a serviceable one, and a lot of newer cars hid the filter inside the tank as part of the pump assembly so it's not a 10-minute job anymore. Then to your injectors, which on a direct injection engine spray fuel at pressures over 2,000 psi through holes finer than a human hair. Water and grit do not belong anywhere near that. I pulled injectors off a 2014 Chevy Cruze once, the little 1.4 turbo, that were clogged and pitted, and the owner drove a route that took him past one specific station every morning. And that station, I found out later, had a delivery scheduled right around his commute. I'm not saying I proved it in a lab. I'm saying I've seen this exact pattern on more cars than I can count, and the fix is free. You just don't fuel up during a delivery. The tanker's right there. It's the most visible warning sign in this entire list, and people walk right past it. The step beyond that, even when there's no truck, glance at whether it's a busy station or a dead one, because that connects directly to something coming up at number 3. File that away. Number 5. You always buy the cheapest gas you can find. The off-brand on the corner, the one that's 4 cents cheaper, every single time. And I get it, I'm not here to tell you to waste money. But here's the thing the price sign doesn't show you. Not all gasoline is the same gasoline. The base fuel, The hydrocarbons, that's roughly the same out of the same regional pipeline. The difference is the detergent additive package the retailer blends in before it goes in the ground. Back in the 90s and 2000s, automakers got frustrated enough with carbon deposits on intake valves and injectors that a group of them, Toyota, Honda, GM, BMW, and others, created a standard called Top Tier, which requires a much higher dose of cleaning detergent than the EPA minimum. The EPA minimum is a floor. It's the legal least you can get away with. Top Tier is what the engineers actually wanted in there. Run the cheap minimum detergent stuff for years and deposits build up on your injectors and in the combustion chamber. The engine runs rougher, the economy creeps down, and you don't notice because it happens 0.25% at a time. Here's the part where I have to be straight with you, because every generic car channel gets this wrong. On a direct injection engine, and most new turbo engines are direct injection now, the fuel sprays straight into the cylinder and never touches the back of the intake valve. So the detergent in your gas, no matter how good, cannot clean the intake valves on those engines, because the cleaner never goes near them. That's why GDI engines get that notorious intake valve carbon buildup and need a walnut blasting service the gas can't prevent. What good fuel does protect on those engines is the injectors and the combustion chamber, which is still real and still worth it. The point isn't that premium brand gas is magic. The point is that knowing which problem the fuel can and can't solve is what separates somebody who actually understands this from somebody repeating a slogan. The cheap gas habit costs you slowly on a port-injected Camry and barely matters on a GDI engine for the valves but still matters for the injectors. Most drivers will never sort that out. Now you can. Number 4. This is the one I told you to hold on to. You fill the tank, the pump clicks off, and you don't stop. You squeeze the handle again and again, topping it off, rounding the number up to an even $40, or just getting a little more in there. That click is not a suggestion. That click is the system telling you the tank is full, and the next thing you do is going to break something. Here's the mechanics, and once you understand it, you'll never do it again. Your fuel tank is not supposed to be filled completely solid with liquid. It needs an airspace at the top, and it has a whole vapor management system attached to it. When the nozzle clicks off, it's because a little vent on the nozzle sensed liquid backing up the filler neck. The tank's effectively full to its design level. When you keep squeezing past that click, you're forcing liquid gasoline up into the part of the system that's only ever supposed to see vapor. Specifically, you're pushing raw fuel into the charcoal canister. That canister is the heart of the evap system. It's a box full of activated charcoal, same stuff as in a water filter, and its whole job is to catch fuel vapor, hold it, and feed it back to the engine to be burned later instead of venting it to the air. It's designed for vapor. Vapor only. Pour liquid gasoline into it and the charcoal saturates, breaks down, and turns to a clogged, mushy mess. Now the canister can't breathe. The tank can't vent properly. You get a check engine light. Sometimes you get a tank that gurgles and spits fuel back at you the next time you fill it. And on a lot of cars the purge valve gets contaminated and sticks too. I inspected a 2017 Nissan Rogue, barely 2 years old, evap system trashed. Owner brought it in for a check engine light that wouldn't clear. Canister was soaked, purge valve fouled. The whole assembly needed replacing. The estimate the dealer wrote was around $600 in parts and labor, and the cause was nothing mechanical at all. He topped off every single fill because he liked round numbers on the receipt. $600 for a habit that saved him from looking at an odd number on a screen. The cross-brand note here, VW and Audi evap systems are even more sensitive to this than the Japanese ones, and a flooded canister on a German car can run you well past $1,000. The fix is the easiest one on this whole list. When it clicks, you're done. Take the nozzle out. That's it. Number 3. This connects to what I flagged back on number 6. You always go to the same station, and that station is dead. The one nobody's at. The cheap one on the edge of town that's been there since the Reagan administration and never has a line. You think you found a secret. You found a problem. A gas station's underground tanks are a self-cleaning system only if there's volume moving through them. Fuel comes in, fuel goes out. The turnover keeps things fresh and keeps the settled layer from building into something serious. A high-volume station off the interstate cycles its entire inventory every day or two. The fuel you pump is days old, maybe hours. A low-volume station on a forgotten corner might have gas that's been sitting in the ground for weeks, and modern gasoline does not love sitting. It's blended with ethanol, typically 10%, what they call E10, and ethanol is hygroscopic, which is a fancy way of saying it pulls water right out of the air. Water gets into that fuel, and in an old tank that water and the ethanol can separate out into a layer at the bottom. That's called phase separation, and it's exactly the corrosive, low-octane sludge you don't want anywhere near your engine. On top of that, the oldest, lowest volume stations tend to have the oldest underground tanks, and old single-wall steel tanks corrode. Rust in the tank, rust in your fuel, rust in your filter and your injectors. I traced a recurring rough idle complaint on a 2011 Toyota Tacoma to exactly this. Guy was loyal to a station that, it turned out, was on a list for tank issues. Moved him to a busy chain station. Problem faded over a few tankfuls as the system cleaned itself out. This isn't theory. The step past the obvious. It's not about the brand on the sign, it's about turnover. A busy off-brand station is better than a dead major brand one. Watch which stations have cars at them. Volume is freshness. A station nobody trusts is a station you shouldn't either. Number 2. Ethanol and getting it wrong. There are 3 habits buried in here, and they all stem from not reading the little label on the pump. First, pumping E15 into a car that isn't approved for it. E15, 15% ethanol, sometimes labeled 88 octane at the pump to make it sound like an upgrade, is approved by the EPA for 2001 model year and newer light vehicles, but plenty of manufacturers will tell you straight in the manual that running it voids your fuel system warranty, and on anything older than 2001, on motorcycles, on small engines, on boats, it can chew through fuel lines and seals that were never designed for that much ethanol. The extra alcohol is more aggressive on certain rubber and plastic compounds. People grab E15 because it's a few cents cheaper than E10, and the 88 inches looks like a bigger number than 87. It's a trap for the wrong vehicle. Second, the bigger one. E85 in a car that isn't flex fuel. E85 is up to 85% ethanol, meant only for vehicles built as flex fuel, which usually have a yellow gas cap or a badge. Dump that into a standard engine, and the computer can't compensate for fuel that's mostly alcohol. It'll run lean in a way it can't correct, throw codes, run terribly, and over time the high ethanol content goes after seals and the fuel pump itself. I've seen somebody do it once by accident at a blender pump where all the grades came out of one nozzle, and they hit the wrong button. One tank won't necessarily destroy the car, but it's a miserable, expensive afternoon getting it drained and flushed. Third, the quiet one, letting ethanol gas sit. If you've got a weekend car, a truck you drive twice a month, a car a college kid leaves parked, ethanol fuel sitting in a half-empty tank for months pulls in moisture and goes stale, and you come back to a no-start and gummed-up injectors. The cross comparison. A flex fuel Silverado is built for any of this. Your standard Accord is built for E10 and nothing hotter. Same pump, same nozzles, completely different tolerance. The step nobody takes, actually read the colored label on the pump handle every time, especially at an unfamiliar station with blender pumps, because the layout isn't standardized and the button you hit last time might be in a different spot. 2 seconds of reading versus a flushed fuel system. That's the trade. And now number 1, the big one. The habit I told you at the start kills more engines than anything else on this list. And the reason it's the worst is that you're not just risking a part. You're slowly cooking the single most expensive to replace component in your fuel system, and you'll never hear it coming until it strands you. You live on the reserve light. You let the tank run down to the last quarter, the last eighth, until that little light glows orange, and then maybe you put in $20 and ride it right back down again. Some of you treat the low fuel light like a goal. You think you're being efficient. Here's what you're actually doing. On the overwhelming majority of cars built in the last 30 years, the fuel pump lives inside the gas tank. It's submerged, and that's not an accident or a packaging compromise. It's by design, because the fuel pump uses the gasoline around it for 2 things the average driver has no idea about. 1. Cooling. That little electric motor runs hot, and the fuel flowing around it and through it carries that heat away. 2. Lubrication. The fuel keeps the pump's internals wet and slick. The engineer who designed it made one core assumption, that the pump would spend its life surrounded by liquid, submerged, cool, lubricated. Picture a swimming pool pump. As long as it's underwater, it runs cool and quiet for years. Let the water level drop below it so it's sucking half air, and it overheats and burns out in a season. Your fuel pump is that pool pump. Every time you run the tank down to fumes, the pump is partly exposed, running hotter, working harder, sometimes pulling in air, and on top of that, remember the sediment and water that settles at the bottom of any tank, including your own. That's exactly the layer the pump is forced to draw from when you're running on empty. You're feeding it the dirtiest, hottest, least lubricated fuel in the tank. At the moment it's already stressed. Over years, that's death by 1,000 cuts. The pump's output weakens, then one cold morning it doesn't come up to pressure, and your car cranks and won't start, or it dies on the highway and drops into limp mode. And here's why this is the one that costs the most. That 2013 F15T I opened with, the guy in the parts aisle, the ion pump module was $420 just for the part, before a shop touches it. Because the pump's in the tank, the labor to get to it means dropping the tank or pulling the bed, and on a lot of vehicles you're looking at $300 to $600 in labor on top. I've seen fuel pump jobs on full-size trucks and SUVs land between $800 and well over $1,000, all in. On a 2015 Ford Explorer, on a Silverado 1500, on the bigger Toyota and Nissan trucks, the tank's a beast to drop. Compare that to a Honda Civic, where some years the pump's accessible under the rear seat, and it's a far easier job. Same part, wildly different bill, depending on how your manufacturer hit it. The dealer's not going to mention that you cooked it yourself. They'll just quote you the number. I used to think the reserve light had a decent buffer, that running it low now and then was fine. Then I started seeing the pattern in the inspection reports, premature fuel pump failures clustering on the drivers who admitted they never fill up until the light's on. It's not the occasional low tank that gets you. It's the habit, repeated for years, that wears the pump out at 90,000 miles instead of 250. The step past the basic advice. Don't just avoid running it bone dry. Try to keep it above a quarter tank as a working habit, because that quarter tank cushion keeps the pump submerged and keeps it drawing from the cleaner fuel above the sediment line, not the muck at the bottom. In winter, that airspace at the top of a near-empty tank is also where condensation forms, which puts water in your fuel right where the pump has to suck it up. A fuller tank has less room for that. One habit. 2 failure modes solved. So that's the 9. And I want to be clear about something before you go, because it's the whole point. Not one of these is a single dramatic mistake. Nobody destroys an engine in one trip to the gas station. That's what makes these dangerous, and that's why almost nobody connects the failure back to the cause. It's the topping off, every fill, for 3 years. It's the reserve light, twice a week for 90,000 miles. It's the dead station you trusted because it was 4 cents cheaper. The damage is already done by the time the light comes on, and by then it looks like the part just failed, like bad luck, like the car was a lemon. It wasn't luck. It was 90 seconds at the pump, done wrong, over and over, until the bill came due. The guy with the F-150 bought the cheap pump, by the way. I told him what I told you. I don't know if he listened. But you've got something he didn't have standing in that aisle. You know which 90 seconds matter now. If you want more of the stuff the dealer would rather you never figured out, you know where to find me.